Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I thought we'd make this fun little birthday card. It kind of has a spring theme to it, so this would be great for somebody who has a spring or Easter birthday. So let's go ahead and get started. So for stamps, I'm using this adorable set. This is called the Duck Stacker set from Art Impression, and we're going to also be using that sentiment a little bit later on as well. So I've placed some of the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock in my Mini Misty, and this is a 100-pound cardstock. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up this stamp using the Versafine Onyx black ink, and that's a permanent black ink. And we're going to be coloring with some watercolor pens, so that's going to work perfectly. We won't get any bleeding or smearing. So now I've pressed that out, and for colors I'm using the bright yellow, scarlet red, yellow, pink flamingo, and light gray. And I'll have the colors all listed in that upper left-hand corner here as we go along. So I put a little bit of pink flamingo on the cheeks. Then I started with the yellow. I'm adding the bright yellow. Now you could do your yellow first and then blend that out and then come in with your shading. But sometimes if it's a small image like this, I'll just add both colors at the same time, and then I could just blend them right in towards the center here. And then you can add a few shadows here and there under the arm, under the wing, I should say, here, and then kind of just down towards the bottom. I'm going to kind of keep that center part the lightest. Now I'm using that scarlet red on the beak, and I'll also use that on his little feet as well. I'm using the blender pen to blend these out, and there I've just added a little touch of the light gray on the tummy area, and I'm leaving it mostly white. And then here you can see me coming back in with that scarlet red on the little feet here. So let me do the second one here. I won't do all of these on camera. I'll just do the first two. Now sometimes I have a hard time being able to tell exactly what I'm coloring in. So Art Impressions has great indexing on their packaging, so it's really easy. Just grab the packaging and you can take a quick look at it. And also there's usually great shadowing on here as well, so you can kind of follow that if you want to. Now I'm going to color these in, and then I'm going to set this aside to dry just a little bit. And once it's fairly dry, I'm going to come in with a little bit more shadowing with a light gray pen, and I'll show you that here in a minute. So I'm just adding those shadows where these ducks kind of come in contact with each other. And then I'm going back with that pink flamingo to add a little bit more pink to the cheeks. So there you can see I have everything all colored in. And now I'm going to use my detail scissors, and I'm going to cut this out. This set does not come with the coordinating die, so I'm just going to leave a little white border all the way around. And you can see as I'm cutting that, I'm moving the paper and not my scissors. It's much easier to do your cutting that way. So just kind of turn the paper as you go and keep your scissors pretty much in one place there. Now I've got the birthday cake set, and this is all these adorable little cakes. And I want this top little duck to be holding one of the cakes, so I'm trying to decide which one is the best size for him. And I'm going to go with that one there at the top. So again, I'm going back to that Versafine Onyx black ink, and I'm going to ink this up. I'm just prepping it with my finger there a little bit because I've never used this stamp before. I'm just rubbing my finger across the top just so that I get a nice clear stamping. Now going back to the scarlet red and the yellow, I'll do the flames on the candles. And then for the candles themselves, I'm going to use a combination of colors. And I'll be using turquoise green, light violet, peach pink, and light green. And I'm just going to alternate those colors. And then I'll use my blender just to blend that out. You do want to make sure you clean that off in between the colors here. You don't want to contaminate the next color. So as you blend those in, just clean off your blender pen. And to clean it off, you just want to scribble it onto your scrap paper until it goes clear. And for the frosting on the cake, I'm using that pink flamingo. Later on, I did add a little bit of that scarlet red to this just to make it blend in with the background on our card a little bit better, but I'll show you that at the end. So I did a little bit of shadowing with that scarlet red. So now I'm using that light gray to do the little platter here. And so this is some really easy coloring. And so you can see this set comes with the coordinating dies. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that little cake. And we're going to also be using that little candle later on. So I'm going to set that aside for now as well. So I've got some purple tape. I'm going to go ahead and attach this, just lining it up. And then I'll run that through my Sizzix Sidekick die cutting machine. Now I've grabbed my Wink of Stella glitter pen, and this is just going to add a little sparkle to the flames on my candles. And then I'm also going to use it on the frosting as well. And this is just a clear glitter pen. So let's set that aside to dry. And now I'm coming in with that light gray, as I mentioned before, and I'm adding a little bit more shadow right where these little ducks come in contact with one another. And the reason I let the paper dry a little bit is I don't want it to blend out too much. I kind of want to keep that shadow intact. I will take my blender pen and just blend it very slightly here. And you can always go back over this if you want to add a little bit more shadowing. So now I've got my watercolor fence dies from Art Impressions, and I'm going to die cut that 2 times. I went ahead and did that off camera, again using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I'm going back to that light gray marker, and I'm just going to add some shadows here. I'm adding them on one side of each of those little pickets, and then I'll add it on the underneath of this little crossbar here. And then I'll quickly blend that out. Again, I'm not spending a lot of time here blending this. And I'll show you this up close, but at the end when I show you the finished card, you'll be able to see it a little bit better because it'll have a little more contrast against the card. So here I'm just adding a little bit more of a shadow. And I did the same thing for that other one as well. So let's set those aside for now. I'm going to my rectangle A2 double stitch dies, and I'm going to grab that largest one. And I'll run that through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine, and that's going to give us a nice stitched border. And then I'm using my Gina K Masking Magic because I want to do the grass and the sky. So I've got those 2 fence pieces there. Now, what I want to do is cut a piece of this Masking Magic. I'm just going to cut this down a little bit so I can use it as a mask to do my grass and my sky. So I'm going to cut this a little bit wider than that panel. And I've cut it at about 3 inches tall there. So now what I want to do is mark with a pencil at about 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to start cutting right at that mark, and I'm going to go kind of on an arch all the way over to that other pencil mark. So don't worry here, you're just cutting a little arch across the top. You do want to keep both pieces of this masking paper. So what I'm going to do is take that top piece and place it right where my grass is going to be. So I've removed part of the backing. I'll stick that down. And then I can go ahead and remove the rest of the backing. And then I want to stick this down really well so that I can do some inking here. So I've got Mowed Lawn and Twisted Citron, and these are the Distress Oxide inks. And then I've got my Hero Arts blending brush. So what I'm going to do is start up on that masking paper and push that ink down onto the cardstock. And I just want to lay down a nice even coating of this. Once I've done that, I'm going to come in with the Mowed Lawn, and I'll come up from the bottom with that. I'm going to leave the top of this little grassy border the lightest. And I'm going back in with that blender and just blending that out a little bit better. So now I can remove that masking. Now if you're going to make more cards, what you can do is just put that backing right back on there and save that for another project. So now I need to dry this off a little bit because my mask just won't stick if I don't. So I've quickly dried that off, and now I can take this bottom part of the mask and put it down here over this grassy border, and I'm going to leave a little tiny smidge of that green showing because I want it to overlap just a tiny bit. Otherwise you might get a white gap there, and it's really hard to get rid of that once that appears. So you want to leave a little sliver of that green showing. Now I have the brand new Saltwater Taffy ink, and I'm going to just start off with that, and I'll blend that all over. So just a nice even coating of that all over. And then I'm coming in with the abandoned coral, and I'm going to add a little shadow down here at the bottom. And these two colors blend together perfectly. This is the perfect shadow color for this Saltwater Taffy. So again, I'll just kind of blend those two, going back to that lighter color and just blending these out. And leaving that mask in place, I'm going to spatter this with a little bit of water. So I've got my Distress sprayer, just has water in it, and I'm going to spatter this panel. And since this ink is a reactive ink with water, we're going to get this really pretty spattered effect. I'm using a small paintbrush here to get some smaller spatters, and then I'm using a paper towel, and I'll just go ahead and blot that up. Once that's done, I can go ahead and remove the mask that was over the grassy border there. And then again, if I want to keep that, I can set that aside. So let's let that dry. And then from this set, this is the Bible Foliage set, I'm going to grab those two little grassy clusters there. Then I'm going to my Art Impressions travel box, and I'm going to grab that smallest acrylic block. That set comes with 3 acrylic blocks and a little watercolor palette as well, and it does come in that little box. So now going back to the Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just testing this on some scrap paper here first. I'm going to stamp some little grassy clusters here, just to give this a little bit more interest and make it a little bit more whimsical. So I did some of the larger ones, and I'm doing a few of those smaller ones as well. So let's go back to these little fence pieces that we have here. And for the left side, I'm going to use that entire fence. So I'm using the Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I'll go ahead and glue this down. And I'm just going to follow the arch of that grassy border. And then for this piece here, I'm going to just use part of it. So I'll just glue just about halfway across here. And then I can go ahead and cut away any of the excess. Now you could certainly have placed those right up against each other. I wanted to leave a little opening there, but in the end it didn't really show. So either way would work here. So I'm going to this Glamour pop-up set, and this has the sentiment that says happy birthday, and it's nice and bold and solid. So I'm going to use that, and I'll also be using the sentiment that came with the little duck stacker set. I'm just going to position things here just to make sure that I have enough room for my little ducks and for the little cake at the top. And then I'll be stamping this sentiment off to the left-hand side here. And this will say, sending you piles of smiles. Happy birthday. So again, I'm just going to prep those stamps just a little bit, just rubbing my finger and my hand across the top there, just to take off any film there. And then I'll get a nice crisp stamping. So I'm inking that up a couple of times, and then I'll go ahead and stamp that. Now, because it is so thick, I did decide to stamp that one more time just to make sure I got a nice black image. Now, I did decide to quickly heat set that because that was a lot of ink and I just didn't want to accidentally touch it and smudge anything. So I quickly heat set that. So now we've got the little ducks and that cake. I'm going to be popping these up on the front of my card. So I'm going to take some Scotch foam mounting tape and I'm going to just cut a couple strips of this and just pop this up. And I'll kind of fill in those other areas with some little squares of that foam mounting tape. And then I can go ahead and I just want to make sure I have this in the right position here. I'm going to go ahead and pop this in place. And then for that cake, I added a little bit of Scotch foam mounting tape at the top, and then I'll add a little glue on the wing there and place that down. Now, going back to that little birthday cake set, I'm going to grab that candle. As I mentioned before, we're going to be using that. We're going to stamp 3 of those candles. And I'm going to just use those same combination of colors to color these in. And these will be for the inside of the card. And then I've got that coordinating die from that same birthday cake set. And we'll run these through the Sizzix Sidekick machine. So let's create our card base. This measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I'm going to score this at 5 1/2. So this will be a top folding standard A2 size card, which will measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So this will fit right on top of our card base. Let's go ahead and glue these two together. I'm just using the table there to line these up. So off camera, I went ahead and stamped this sentiment, and this is from the Holiday Mansion birthday set from Art Impressions. And it says, on your birthday, may you be blessed with things that make you the happiest. And I just used a small acrylic block to stamp that on the inside of my card. And then I've got these 3 little candles, and I'm going to go ahead and glue those down. That just kind of brings your eye into the inside of the card and kind of ties everything together here. I'm going to glue these flat. Now I've got some Buttons Galore and More. These are the Sparkletz embellishments, and this is called Barefoot Beach. And you get all these really pretty little gems in here. But I want to use a couple of the ones that look like bubbles, and then a couple of those have more of a rhinestone look. And those will really blend in nicely with our background, but add a little bit of interest and sparkle here. Now, after I did this, I just still felt like the card was missing something. I just couldn't decide what it was. So I set the card aside and then I came back to it later on and I decided that I wanted to put a couple little flowers on there. So I went back to that Glamour pop-up set and there's 2 flowers in that set. There's a large and a small flower. So using those same combination of colors that we used before, I'm just going to color these in. I'll do one on camera and I did the other 3 off camera. I did the center with the yellow and the bright yellow, and then for the flower colors, I'm adding the color towards the center of the flower and just pulling it out towards the edges. And again, I did that for all of these. So now we can go ahead and attach those to the card. I'm going to glue some of these flat and then I'll pop up a couple of these as well. And again, I just thought that finished off the card. It just looked a little bit bare there in that little section. So I'm going to add 3 on the left-hand side and then I'll add 1 more off to the right there. And that sort of brings all those colors down to the bottom of our card as well. So we have them in the candles there, the flowers, and then on the little candles on the inside of the card as well. Going back to that little glitter pen and adding a little sparkle to the center of those flowers, and then going back to my white gel pen and adding a few little highlights. So sometimes you just need to set it aside for a little while and take a good look at it and see what you can come up with. Like I say, I just couldn't decide how to fill in that little area, but now I'm happy with it. And here I'm just adding some more highlights. I'm adding 3 little white dots to each of the cheeks on those little ducks. And you can also see there that I added a little bit of that scarlet red to the frosting on the cake, and I blended that in a little bit. So here's a closer look at our finished card. And again, these little ducks are just adorable. So I really hope you got inspired. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. As always, thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.